today. I'm sure the first question you guys will have is about Matthew, and like we've said, we're going to be flexible and fluid. I think more than anything, I feel for Matthew because of how much he wants to be out there and feel good. Ultimately, what ended up happening, had a great workout, felt good, but then come in today and it doesn't feel great, and so didn't think that was the right decision to be able to push him. We've kind of always talked about flexibility, being fluid with some of the plans. And I think more than anything, I feel for a guy that, I really care about, that wants to be out there more than anything else. We're going to be smart, but he didn't feel good enough, and we didn't think it was the right thing to do based on, how he woke up feeling today.
He woke up with his back hurting?
Yeah, he just didn't, it didn't respond the way that you wanted it to. He, when he was out here working out, it was great, and then, it's like anything else, let's communicate. We all know there's nobody that's tougher than this guy, and so we are going to still be safe. But I think more than anything, it's like, he wants to be out there more than anybody. His teammates can't wait for him to be out there. But I'm going to defer to, Reggie and Dr. Watkins, and then listening to Matthew's feedback, because we just felt like, it wasn't in alignment with how he was feeling to, to progress accordingly.
In regards to the flexibility, if you woke up feeling good tomorrow, practice tomorrow?
I don't know if we've gotten to that point yet. It would be individual. That was kind of part of the plan, but the plan was for him to be able to go today, and that didn't come to fruition. So I think ultimately what we want to be able to do is take it a day at a time. I think that's healthy for everybody. Sometimes when you set expectations, they're not met. What's the first response? There's frustration, and that's okay to feel that way, but how can we move forward accordingly, and most importantly, support a guy that when he gets out here, we're going to be really excited about it, but kind of like I've told you guys from day one, I'll defer to the experts. I'll defer to Matthew. Nobody's tougher than this guy, and so we're going to be smart with it. And I know he wanted to be out here more than anybody else, but we just didn't. Talking to Reggie, felt like this was the right approach, just based on some of the feedback we got from him.
Are you? I know you said in the past, not concerned, no problem.
Here's what I would say. I think the fair answer is I'm going to take it a day at a time as well, because I can't be 27 days from now in Houston. We have to be able to have agility and flexibility, and that's not exclusive to Matthew. That's really for, all of our guys. So I think the most important thing is, number one, my job is to support him, put my arm around him and let him know that, hey, love you. I'm sorry that we're going through this, but we will be, let's keep a positive mindset, and let's continue to attack this thing to try to be able to get our hands around it so that he can feel as good as possible when we open up against Houston. I do think it's important to be able to get some work in, but not at the expense of following the plan that we've talked about. And so I think the truest thing is stay one day at a time, continue to support him, and then I'll defer to the experts on, where we're at with things that are a little bit outside of my area of expertise. But I do have total trust and confidence in, our medical group. You guys know how I feel about Reggie and the medical advice that he's getting, and nobody wants to get it figured out more than he does as well.
We noticed this, I guess, hyperbolic rejuvenation. When did that arrive? Was that always part of the plan, or is that here because of what he's going
No, that's separate. It's actually a time machine. If you saw me year 1 to year 9, I've been sitting in that thing for a while, looking. So, no, it's a recovery deal. There's a lot of different things, red light therapy, a lot of different modalities, and so, Reggie's always on the cutting edge of some different things that can help our players recover and overall health and wellness, and so that's what it's alignment in. And, feel free to sneak in there, Gary. You might like it.
Is that the kind of treatment that he was working on?
That's what he was doing today, but that's kind of normal for any of our players. It wasn't anything specifically related to his back that he was doing in there.
Is that normally in the facility?
You know what? I don't have a damn clue. I think this is a new thing that we're experimenting with. Reggie's always got some sort of cool stuff, and I know that his intentions are always geared towards making sure that we have, some of those little edges in this league, but about providing as good of setting and situation for our players, especially as it relates to the recovery, and so he's always at the forefront of that stuff.
Outside of Matthew, use the word frustration, how do you try to motivate the team and try to keep young guys motivated?
And in regards to just in general, or
Just in general, going through challenges.
Yeah, I think consistency. I think the first thing is you got to connect with these guys, understand where they're at, making sure that you create an atmosphere and environment where there's the appropriate urgency, but we want them to enjoy it too. What kind of vibe do we create in here? What does it look like with their teammates, with their coaches? And so I feel like our guys have done a really good job of that. And I think ultimately all we can control is how we impact each other in a positive way every day. While also acknowledging when you talk about frustration, like that's okay to acknowledge your real emotions. Now you acknowledge it, and now let's respond instead of react accordingly. But one of the things that you love about Matthew, or really a lot of our guys in general, is a mindset, and a mindset that we're looking for. These are skills that are developed, and you get that way by leaning into hard stuff and training yourself to be able to handle those moments with that poise, with that calm that we're looking for. But also being able to create the courage with how we go about every single day to go for it and not be afraid to fail. And so whether it's supporting each other, whether it's responding accordingly, or cultivating the kind of environment that we want to try to minimize those things as much as possible, that's what we're going to do.
So, a couple more guys.
Yeah.
Today, any limitations there?
No, it was good. We got Puna Ford back out there, Kella Witherspoon. So really everybody was back out there, that had kind of been missing. And that's a real positive. A lot of those guys were on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively, we had pretty much all hands on deck. With the exception of Matthew taking part in individual drills, and thought it was a good competitive practice. That's going to be in alignment over the next couple weeks, where we're going to be in the mornings. You guys know it gets pretty ridiculous out here, and so I think that's the smart thing, and it doesn't affect our kind of trajectory in terms of our teaching. Part of why we like to go walkthroughs then practices because of the installs. We're just picking and choosing at this point, and so it serves us well for a couple different reasons.
Sean, have you analyzed the details of the practice with the Saints?
For the most part, we're just making sure fields are good. We can get the officials and the proper crews, but roughly anticipate starting around 11 o'clock and finishing a little bit after 1. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're getting at, but I feel pretty good about the possibility of all being for sure we're going to get that done. Closer than I did yesterday.
With Matthew, has surgery been ruled out?
That hasn't been a conversation that we've had. I think it's more along the lines of, this week kind of represented that target date of really starting to be able to implement him back. The workout was a step in the right direction, and then, I'm glad that he's able to give us the feedback so we can say, let's go back here. That hasn't been something that we've talked about.
Like the doctors haven't embraced that as a possibility.
I haven't gone down that road yet in terms of those types of conversations. There's been a lot of conversations about what's the best method of how we want to approach it. That hasn't been something that comes up yet. Okay?
If you were playing this week,
That's I don't know that. I think he still probably would be able to play just based on how he feels. But because of how he felt overall, it's like, okay, what's the risk reward with us being 27 days out? Now, I'm not minimizing how important every single day is. I don't want that to get mixed up. But when you are making decisions, you have to say, okay, number one, what's best for the player, and then what's best for our football team. And in this instance, the approach, knowing that he was going to do some individual and how he felt, just didn't think that was worth it for us. But whether that he'd be the one that could be able to tell you whether or not he'd be able to play. I mean, he looked damn good throwing the other day, but nobody's tougher than him and has overcome more stuff than he has. But we also want to see if we can have him feeling as good as possible, because that's super important. And I feel like that's a real responsibility that we take as coaches, to try to put our guys in the right spots to be successful, but also to be able to feel good. Okay, thanks, guys.